Out comes Palkia, a huge core breaker for the team, but Palkia not going to appreciate the Shadow Stone Edge damage. Stone Edge lands, getting the opponent low. We then serve up that two-piece combo and Palkia is going to be straight in and straight out. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are back at it with yet another incredible battle submission from the one and only XBoston, running triple shadows in the Open Master League. A lot of trainers avoid this format completely, thinking it's pay to win. I'll be honest, I would somewhat agree with that, as 99% of teams you're going to see are going to contain 3 level 50 legendary Pokemon. However, Boston, being the king of spice, is repping a full non-legendary team, using 3 Pokemon that have all had Com Days, so this is by far one of the most accessible teams you can run. Today we're going to be taking a look at a double rock strategy, something I've never seen anyone else try. Rock offensively is fantastic, able to hit a lot of threats for super effective or neutral. However, defensively it is dreadful. So to try and cover these weaknesses, we've got a Gyarados running outrage as that surprise nuke. Without any further ado, let's get into the battles. And in game 1, we see Boston pick up a fantastic lead. Godzilla into Giratina, the opponent save switches into Xerneas, and we have no real response. Boston answers with his second rock type. He shields up the Moonblast, builds up to the Rock Wrecker bait with the break-in swipe. The opponent craps their pants, putting up that Protect Shield. However, we don't see the debuff. The RNG gods not smiling upon Boston's spice. However, despite not being debuffed, Rhyperior able to survive the super effective close combat and make the Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker forces the opponent's final Protect Shield. Switch advantage has been lost, but Boston can just send in T-Tar, shield once, commit to the full smackdown farm down, and it's time to start unleashing our hard-hitting charge moves. The opponent not wanting to get farmed down, send out Lugia. Lugia, one of the thickest mon in the format, but his bulk's about to be put to the test. Shadow Stone Edge rocks the opponent deep into the red, and then we make a savage Sky Attack catch back onto Gyarados. Gyarados going to be able to get the full Dragon Breath farm down, and the opponent is going to say, no thank you, I'm out of here, and concede the match. In the next battle, we see Godzilla into Rayquaza, a very nice lead. The opponent staying in, and just look at this smackdown damage. As the opponent staying in, such a dreadful matchup, it must mean they've got something else that doesn't want to see T-Tar in the back. Boston tanks the break-in swipe, commits to the full smackdown farm down. Out comes Zacian. Boston fires off the Stone Edge, and then we see the pivot into Gyarados. Gyarados going to fire off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail won't do too much damage, and this is by no means a good matchup for Boston, as the opponent has got the potential to run Wild Charge. We see the instant no shield deployed. Gyarados straight in and straight out, and then Boston sends out Rhyperior. We see the instant shield deployed. Boston blocks up the incoming close combat, and there it is. The second thing that does not want to see a rock type. Boston farms up, full sends the Rock Wrecker. Does the opponent respect the damage? Ah, boo, Mr. Opponent. But Boston surprises the opponent, making a savage catch, catching the Sacred Fire back onto T-Tar. Back out comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior able to outpace to the Rock Wrecker, and Rock Wrecker gonna be massive overkill. Get that Ho-Oh off my screen. Back out comes Zacian. Boston just gonna fire off the break-in swipe. This is double resisted. Doesn't quite knock out, but one more Mud Slap is gonna be all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, we see Godzilla into Palkia. Palkia, somewhat of a core breaker for this team, but Boston looking to maneuver his way out of it, catching the Aqua Tail onto Gyarados. The opponent continued to stay in, doing us a huge favour as Boston managed to get off a huge amount of Dragon Breath damage. The opponent banks a charge move, pivot into Landorus. We full send the Outrage, which of course goes shielded. People are petrified of Shadow Pokemon, putting up Protect Shields left, right and centre. When I first saw this battle submission from Boston, I thought, how the hell do you deal with Palkia or Landorus? And we managed to see both of them on the same team. Boston sends back out T-Tar, looks to fire off the Crunch but loses CMP. Boston with shield advantage, blocks up the incoming Sancia Storm and returns fire with the Crunch. Crunch forces the opponent's final Protect Shield. Boston looking for the full smackdown farm down, but Landorus far too spammy. Boston gonna go all in on T-Tar, shield the next Sancia Storm and commit to the full smackdown farm down. I've rewatched this battle around 15 times now, and I'm so confused. We just knocked out Landorus, but back out comes Landorus once again. Despite me being bamboozled, unfortunately the opponent running double ground, we can't beat that, and Boston is going to concede probably the strangest battle I've ever seen. Time to shake off the confusion and get back to the commentary. We see a fantastic lead. T-Tar into Yveltal, the opponent safe switches into Landorus, and stay in school kids, learn to count Boston. Makes a very nice Sancia Storm catch onto his flyer. Boston then correctly shields up the Stone Edge. We can now heavily overfarm, farm up to the double Aqua Tail. And this is going to mean the opponent cannot take back switch. The opponent going to try their luck. But Trainer, it just is not happening. Boston fires off the double Aqua Tail. The opponent shields the first, the second, secures the knockout back out. Comes Yveltal. Gyarados still not done. Gonna fire off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail won't do too much damage, but in combination with the Dragon Breath, we do manage to get the opponent below half health. Boston attempts to catch a Dark Pulse. Back onto T-Tar unsuccessfully. Boston then respects the Focus Blast, but the opponent does not have it. Despite not having Focus Blast, the opponent looking to get off some chip damage, firing off yet another Oblivion Wing. And my god, they are so weak to T-Tar as out comes Mewtwo. Crunch forces the opponent's final Protect Shield, and this also isn't a Focus Blast. The opponent fires off the double resisted Side Strike, which doesn't get the job done. T-Tar able to outpace to the next Crunch. Crunch gonna be secure in the knockout. Back out comes Yveltal. T-Tar smackdown farms down and sweeps the back line. GG's and thanks for playing. In the next battle, Boston really is the algorithm confirmed, picking up the Dream lead. Ho-Oh going to be instantly retreating. The opponent sends out the basic Bitch Tin Can, and we answer with Gyarados. I'm quite surprised we didn't go Rhyperior, but we're going to let Boston cook. It looks like Boston just going to completely sack the Gyarados. I imagine we then send out Rhyperior, Mod Slap farm down, getting a running start, and then that Ho-Oh really has nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Boston does indeed go for that play. Out comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior gets the Mud Slap farm down, back out. Comes Ho-Oh. Boston fires off 3 Mud Slaps and the Breaking Swipe bait. Breaking Swipe forces the Protect Shield. Boston then looks to make the catch back onto T-Tar. The opponent really has nothing to throw. The opponent can fire off the Sacred Fire, but we resist everything. The opponent then pivots out into Mewtwo, and once again, T-Tar looking like the king of all the core breakers. Boston fires off the Crunch, forcing a Protect Shield. As Boston still has 2 shields, the opponent looks to fire off the double resisted Side Strike, but Trainer, that sir, just isn't going to get the job done. It doesn't even put T-Tar into Psycho Cut farm down range. The opponent forced to dump further energy, and this game is so over. Back out comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior fires off the Breaking Swipe, sending Mewtwo back to its Pokeball. Back out comes Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh is about to get knocked out of the sky. We've got the Rock Wrecker locked and loaded, and that is going to be all she wrote. GG's and thanks for playing. Heading into the next battle. Oof, not a great lead. We see Boston instantly retreat into Gyarados. The opponent continued to stay in, and Boston looks to full send the Outrage. It looks like the opponent actually caught. They caught the Outrage onto Giratina and actually put up that Protect Shield regardless. My god, would have that been a very sneaky nuke. The opponent not wanting to take too much Dragon Breath damage, fire off the Ominous Wind, getting the boost, but no boost is going to save him in this matchup. The opponent reveals Ominous Wind, which means they don't have Dragon Pulse. I've never seen Ominous Wind and Dragon Pulse as a combination of moves, and this opponent isn't going to break that trend. The opponent firing off Ominous Wind after Ominous Wind, and after the boost they are doing quite a lot of damage. The opponent then looked to snipe with Kyogre, and this is dreadful. We fire off the Stone Edge lands some heavy neutral damage, but Rhyperior takes double super effective from water, and holy crap, look at the damage. Boston at this point playing out the inevitable. He shields up the Surf, but just the waterfalls have left us deep in the red, and we are going to get absolutely brutally beat down in this battle and take a heartbreaking loss. GG's to that opponent. After that loss, we can see Boston making an adjustment, leading Gyarados running an ABB style team rather than ABA. So I imagine we're now going to start safe switching T-Tar that is only single weak to water, looking to bait out a Kyogre, allowing Rhyperior the best opportunity to sweep the back line. In this battle, we led Gyarados into the basic Bitch Tin Can. The opponent actually correctly shielded up at Outrage. I'm quite surprised to see a shield, as I think Boston's probably the only lunatic, firstly running Gyarados and secondly running Outrage. The opponent forced a Protect Shield, throwing the Iron Head onto Rhyperior, then give up switch, safe switching into Mewtwo. But my god, do we have one very nice answer for Mewtwo in the form of our T-Tar. The opponent farming up a boatload of energy, potentially looking to bait a potential Focus Blast. Boston invest that protection, they throw the Shadow Ball. T-Tar then able to get the full smackdown farm down and leave with so much energy. Back out comes Dialga, and Dialga is instantly greeted with the Crunch. Crunch will be lethal from this range. The opponent invests that Protect Shield, then pivot out into Palkia. Palkia, a huge core breaker for this team, but they're not going to appreciate the Shadow Stone Edge. Stone Edge rocks the opponent into the red Boston, then goes for that wham bam combo play. Serves up that two-piece combo with the Big Mac and the fries. Palkia is straight in and straight out. We would have been able to mod slap farm down Dialga, so the opponent does concede the match. In the next battle, we see Kyogre in the lead, exactly where the team wants to see it. The opponent save switches into Florges, and we answer with Rhyperior. Rhyperior actually pretty bulky, even as a shadow. You can see we easily absorb the Moonblast Boston. Farms up to the Rock Wrecker, and he full sends it. Does the opponent respect the damage? They do not get that Florges out of here. We actually pretty healthy. We've already seen that despite us being at like 35% HP, 2 waterfalls is all it takes to knock us out. So the opponent doesn't actually get too much free farm. Back out comes Kyogre Boston. Once again, full sending the nuke, and again it lands. This opponent probably thinking, what the heck is going on? The opponent even nuke us with a thunder. There are nukes going off left, right, and centre. The opponent's final Pokemon is Xerneas. Of course, they're a fairy. We're a dark type. But Boston has 2 Protect Shields, 2 Hide Behind, and he's going to be able to just double shield, smackdown farm all the way down, and that is going to be game over. The opponent can't hold a Moonblast and a close combat, so they're going to be forced to throw the close combat here, and with a lowered defense, that smackdown is going to knock them out. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, we see the battle of the water types. Despite us taking neutral from these Dragon Tails and the opponent taking super effective, Palkia just has a far superior stat product. Boston correctly shields up the spatial round. He's then going to return fire with the Aqua Tail. Boston going for a cheeky undercharge, wanting the farm down. A very nice play, and Boston does leave with residual energy good to go. Out comes Dialga, and once again Boston is full sending the neutral outrage. Outrage goes unshielded, getting Dialga down below half health. Here comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior looking for the full Mud Slap farm down. We're unable to get it before the opponent reaches the Iron Head. Boston shields at the Iron Head. We are down both Protect Shields, whereas the opponent still has 2, but this game is over as their final Pokemon is Ho-Oh, and we are so good into this thing. Boston doesn't even build up to the Rock Wrecker. He's just spamming off breaking swipes, looking to get some debuffs on the opponent. I don't think we got the debuff either time. But regardless, Sacred Fire will knock out Rhyperior and blink, and you might miss it as 1, 2, 3 smackdown is going to be all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, we see yet another Dialga. Essentially why I call it the basic bitch tin can, as people like to think the key to success is running this thing. Boston full sends the outrage. Outrage goes unshielded, nearly one-shotting Dialga. Unless the opponent's running Thunder, this can only be an Iron Head. Boston tanks the Iron Head, gets the Dragon Breath farm down, and out comes Mewtwo. Boston, of course, very happy to see Mewtwo here, as out comes T-Tar. The opponent thinks, fuck this, and they're going to concede the match. In the next battle, we see some Shadow and Shadow crimes. A very cool Shadow Lugia from the opponent. I imagine Boston's going to look to catch a Sky Attack at some stage, and he does that perfectly, catching onto Rhyperior. Sky Attack essentially heals Rhyperior, and out comes Kyogre. Oof, I think this is why we should save switch into Tyranitar. However, in this matchup, I think it's logical to go into Rhyperior, as of course Tyranitar is objectively better into Lugia. This is actually also a Shadow Kyogre, so I wonder if this opponent's running triple legendary Shadows, which would be an insanely cool team. Boston tanks the Surf, returns fire with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail isn't lethal, but Boston is able to Dragon Breath farm down afterwards, and we are spamming the switch. The opponent also running triple Shadows. Not triple legendary Shadows, but triple Shadows regardless, and what a cool team. The opponent baits us like a savage with the Body Slam, killing a poor defenseless cat, but undeterred, Boston returns fire with the Crunch, forces that Protect Shield in return, and we see the defense drop. Boston thinking about calling the bait last second, correctly shields up the super, and the opponent now forced to reset that double debuff, pivoting out into Lugia. Lugia is going to be greeted with the Crunch. Crunch will be forcing the opponent's final Protect Shield, and they're going to be forced to throw. Our Gyarados has hardly any HP. However, we should be able to Dragon Breath farm down before the Dragon Tail registers. Boston gets the farm down, leaves with the outrage, and Boston is going to pick up the dub in the battle of the triple shadows. Huge shout out to that opponent, and by the off chance you're watching, I'd love to shoutcast some Shadow Kyogre action. In the next battle, we see Gyarados into the basic bitch tin can. Boston again looking to YOLO the outrage. The question is, does the opponent respect the damage? Outrage! Oof. Boo, Mr. Opponent. Go shielded. The opponent then makes somewhat of a questionable play, opting to throw the Iron Head. At worst, would have reached an Aqua Tail, which they would have survived, but I guess the thought process from the opponent is they're looking to keep health on Dialga. Boston instantly gives up his shield advantage, blocking up the incoming Iron Head, and then commits to the full Mud Slap farm down. Out comes Groudon, which is something our backline doesn't want to see, but at least we have got an energy lead. Boston fires off the breaking swipe, getting the attack debuff. Boston unable to outpace to the next breaking swipe, and we managed to get this thing down below half health. The opponent is going to need to full send a Precipice Blades to secure the knockout. The opponent baits us with the Fire Punch. What a call from Boston. Despite us being double weak to ground in the back, Boston able to handle this core breaker beautifully. The opponent full sends the Precipice Blaze. Boston sends out T-Tar, gets the resisted, smackdown farm down, and the opponent's final Pokemon is Lugia. Boston farms up a boatload of energy, fires off the Crunch, forces the opponent's final Protect Shield. Boston then able to reach the Crunch on the CMP tie. This CMP is not even close. If you wonder why Lugia is so bulky, its attack is a miserable 174 compared to Tyranitar's 223. In the next battle, what else do you expect to see in the lead other than Dialga? We already know Boston is going to full send the outrage. Some shield, some don't. This opponent opts to no shield, near getting one shot. Boston able to get the Dragon Breath farm down. The opponent not particularly happy with our surprise nuke and instantly concedes the match. What a way to clutch up a big 5-0 surprise nuke in the next battle. We see Palkia in the lead. The opponent save switches into Dialga. Boston stays in, looks to fire off the outrage. Does the opponent respect the damage? Outrage! Oof, go shielded. Boston then makes a very late switch into Rhyperior. I think the issue here is they're definitely going to reach 2 Iron Heads, so Boston is going to be forced to double shield his Rhyperior here in the mid game. However, that might not be the worst play, to be honest, as of course we are double weak to water, but Palkia isn't using a water type quick move, and we are running breaking swipe, which is going to hit him for super effective. Back out comes Palkia. Boston fires off the first breaking swipe, forcing the opponent's final protection. Rhyperior then able to go for the next breaking swipe, despite it not getting same type attack bonus, does get him below half health. Out comes Landorus. Boston attempts to catch the Santia Storm onto Gyarados unsuccessfully. However, the opponent is going to be forced to full send a Stone Edge to secure the knockout. The opponent gets greedy, thinking a double resisted Santia Storm will get the job done. Trainer, let me tell you, it did not. The huge misplay from the opponent puts Boston in the driver's seat as the opponent is forced to dump yet another Santia Storm as they are not double resisting. Mud Shot farming down Gyarados. Tyranitar comes in, gets the Smackdown farm down. The opponent fires off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail doesn't get the job done. Tyranitar Smackdown farms down, and we're able to beat 2 of the biggest core breakers of this team in the form of Landorus and Palkia. Although, in fairness, a lot due to the opponent being very, very greedy. In the next battle, we see Gyarados into Dialga. The opponent doesn't farm up to a potential Draco. Boston calls the opponent doesn't have Thunder. We tank the Iron Head, return fire with the Outrage. Outrage goes unshielded, and Gyarados is able to get the Dragon Breath farm down. So that is a prime example of what Outrage does for Gyarados. It gives you that big win against the basic bitch tin can. Boston then sends out Tyranitar. We are able to bait out Kyogre, and Boston is forced to start shielding, as we already know that Rhyperior does not appreciate the double super effective waterfalls. We return fire with a Crunch. Unfortunately, we don't see a debuff, and then we see the pivot into Rhyperior. Rhyperior getting torn apart by these waterfalls. We fire off the breaking swipe, forced to protect shield. I think this is over. Boston looks for the Smackdown farm down. We're unable to get it. The opponent waterfall farms us down, and unfortunately we're going to pick up the loss. In the next battle, we see Xerneas in the lead. Boston stays in, looks to fire off the Aqua Tail. I think we could go for a catch here of a Moonblast, but my god, would it be risky. Boston does sort of need to switch out of this matchup. This isn't a great matchup for Gyarados by any means, and our backline will take super effective from the close combat. The opponent lands the Moonblast pivot into Dialga to catch the next Aqua Tail. The Aqua Tail chip damage will allow Rhyperior to come in, shield once, Mud Slap farm all the way down. If there's a Kyogre in the back, it is curtains for us. Boston does get the full Smackdown farm down. Oh fuck, I talked it into existence. Wincon is the opponent not shielding. We full send the Rock Wrecker, which the opponent shields. Boston thinking fuck this, let's move swiftly on. In the next battle, we see Hoto in the lead, a much better lead. The entirety of our team do very well into this thing. The opponent say switches into Dialga and Boston answers with Rhyperior. The opponent throws at really poor timing. With that throw, if 6 Mud Slaps knock out, the opponent isn't going to reach the next charge move. The opponent doesn't reach the next move and out comes Mewtwo. This game already looks over. Boston fires off the breaking swipe, forcing a Protect Shield, and this time he's full sending the Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker goes unshielded. Get that Mewtwo off my screen. Back out comes Hoto and Boston again. Full sending the Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker. Oh, go shielded. Rhyperior doesn't get to land. Back-to-back big booms. Boston now essentially playing with his food, pivoting out into Gyarados. The opponent fires off the Sacred Fire, which doesn't get the job done. Boston gonna full send the Outrage. Outrage hits for neutral, doesn't quite one-shot, but Boston able to Dragon Breath farm down, and we take that game. In the next battle, we see another Man of Culture running Rhyperior. We already know that Aqua Tail is going to be double super effective, so the opponent invests that Protect Shield. Boston then pivots out into the mirror. Rhyperior does have access to superpower. However, most Rhyperior probably run Breaking Swipe and Rock Wrecker. Rhyperior has actually got access to a whole wide variety of moves that can be quite useful. It's also got things like Surf. It's interesting that the opponent is staying in. They mustn't like our own Rhyperior in the back. Both trainers looking for the Mud Slap farm down. We end up getting the simultaneous KO. Boston waits out his clock, sends out Gyarados, and out comes Shadow Tyranitar. What are the chances of both trainers running double rock? The opponent running ABA just like Boston was as well. How random is that? The opponent's final Pokemon is also a water and dragon type. Not that we're a dragon with Gyarados, we're water and flying, but it thinks it's a dragon, so a pretty similar team regardless. I've got super distracted in this battle. I honestly thought Boston was the only trainer in the world running double rock. Apparently he is not. Boston still will run Protect Shield, too high behind, gonna shield up the Brutal Swing, reach the Stone Edge, and in the battle of the double rock types, Boston is gonna come out victorious. GG's and thanks for playing. And unfortunately, that is gonna draw to a close today's showcase. As always, XBoston is so much fun to shoutcast. Huge shout out to him for the battle submission. So if you're enjoying the content, smash that like button. If you're new, consider subscribing if you'd like your battles featured on my channel. A link to a battle submission form is down below. And as always, a huge thank you to everyone for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.